Right now, that would be 11 people, I believe.
Right now we have 9.
All righty. Wade, you're okay to start? Alrighty. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to May's, the month of May's Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. My name is Jonathan Forbes, Chair. I calling this meeting to order. We are virtual, and this is being recorded via GoToMeeting here. Everyone has received a copy of the agenda that was sent out prior, those members, and the first item up is public comment, and I would ask Wade, is there anybody waiting for any commentary or anything in the chat box at this time?
We have not heard anything, but if there is anybody here, please feel free to type something in the chat or the questions, and we will acknowledge you.
And I'll pause for a minute or so. All right, Wade, I don't see anybody in the chat box, so we'll go ahead and move on here. The next thing on our agenda was the approval of the minutes, as we've done before in the last year. I've asked that, has anybody read the minutes that were attached to the agenda? If so, was there any changes that needed to be made or suggested edits to consider? And I'll pause. Okay, hearing or seeing none, we'll just move on that the minutes are approved as written here. The next thing, it's not on the agenda here, but this is when we typically have a quick round robin around the table on any kind of member interests that perhaps are coming up here in the coming month here. And I understand, Jim, you may have a couple for discussion.
Yeah, I got a phone call last week from Richard Johnson regarding some of the things that he noticed out on Bruce B. Downs. He asked me to take a look at the right turn lanes, because there are a couple that he noted that didn't have proper bike lane markings to show that the bike lane was to the inside of the right turn lane. And so I went to Google Earth, my favorite application, and looked at every one of the dedicated right turn lanes between Amberley Boulevard, whatever, and County Line Road. And most of them, in fact, did have a competent bike lane, not terribly wide, but still there. With the exceptions being Point of Tampa Bay, which had no called out bike lane. It looks like Donna Michelle Drive, which is just north of the I-75 crossing, also had no bike lane. And it also looks like southbound Tampa Palms, Commerce Palms didn't have a bike lane. So I was requesting that you pass that along to County Public Works and also to FDOT.
We will pass along that request.
Okay, thank you.
Was there another one, Jim, or was that was it?
That was it.
Okay. Any other members' interests here for the good of the group? Well, I'll raise one. This Friday, there is the May's the National Bike Month, and this Friday is Ride to Work Day, and there is an assembly of a number of stops where it will all accumulate at Gaslight Park there I think at 7:30, Wade.
The rides, I believe, begin at 7:30, but I will pull up the flyer.
I think it's targeted to arrive all together at 7:30 there for a ceremony or sort. So that is this Friday. Alrighty. So if there's none other here, I'll pause again.
Just, are we going to talk about bike stock at all?
John,
I don't know
talk to us about bike stock.
This May 22nd, which is Saturday, right?
Correct.
Okay. They're closing part of Bayshore down for bicyclists and pedestrians between Swan and Beta Bay from 3 to 7 p.m. That's all I know. I got it on the emergency app.
Yeah, I believe it's part of the open streets there for that period of time there on Bayshore.
Yeah.
So that'll be good. All right.
Make you the presenter if.
Yeah, I'm ready whenever you are.
All right, go ahead, John.
All right then. So I guess we will turn it over then to Dr. Wong here on our status reports here for the Transportation Improvement Program.
All right, thanks. I didn't get the screen control request yet. Okay, there it goes. Give me 1 sec, everyone. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. All right, thanks everyone. Good evening, BPAC. I'm Johnny Wong, TPO staff, and this evening I'm here to give you a brief on the Transportation Improvement Program update for this fiscal year. Thanks for bearing with me ahead of time. I'm gonna acknowledge that this presentation is kind of long. It took about 45 minutes this morning. I expect that it'll take about that long right now, so thank you for settling in. I want to open up by explaining some tip basics. This year, I have spent a considerable amount of time working with members of the community who have been through the tip process in the past. And some of the feedback that they gave me about the tip is that it's very intimidating, it's complex, difficult to understand, way too long. And so as the project manager for the tip this year, and this being my first time, my goal was to simplify it as much as possible and to clarify some of the more complex topics so that everyone can understand what the tip is, why we have it, and also why it's updated on an annual basis. I'm breaking this presentation down into 3 sections. The first one that I'm about to get into is the longest. It's going to cover process, it's going to cover some requirements, and more or less just teach you how to read the tip. Sections 2 and 3 that we'll get to later are going to identify some of the highlights, like the changes that have been made this year from last year. And then in the end, before we wrap up, I'll get into the next steps and explain what needs to happen before the MPO board hears it on June 9th. So getting into it, the tip. The tip is one of the primary responsibilities of the MPO. That alongside the LRTP are probably the 2 plans that we work the most on. They're related, and a lot of folks don't understand the relationship. The tip, which is on the right-hand side, is a 5-year plan that more or less has 5 years worth of transportation projects in it. The 5 years of projects in the tip are the first 5 years of the long-range transportation plan, which is shown on the left of the screen. That long-range plan is a vision for the county that goes out to 20 or 25 years. And because it goes out so many years, it's not really feasible for us to include a lot of detail on the projects that are in there. And you all are kind of familiar with this, but you may not understand why. So you know that when we adopt the long-range plan, we break projects down into the purpose that they meet. Vision 0 identifies safety projects. Real Choices identifies multimodal projects, trails and side paths, sidewalks, some transit service. State of good repair identifies infrastructure projects. We leave those categories very broad because we can't identify 25 years worth of projects in the plan. It would be way too long. So whereas the 25-year long-range plan is broad, general, and visionary, we can get into a lot more detail in the 5-year TIP. So when you're looking at projects listed in the TIP, you're going to see information like alignments. You're going to see more accurate estimates of cost. You're going to see phases and also funding codes, ways that we pay for these projects. Like I said, the TIP is one of the MPO's main responsibilities, and at least in the state of Florida, it has to contain 5 years worth of projects, and it has to be updated each year. Aside from those two requirements, there's a lot more that apply to us. I've listed some of the important ones on this slide, and I'll read them off to you right now. I guess the first and most important requirement that the federal reviewers care about is that the TIP is consistent with the long-range plan. They also want us to show that production has been coordinated with FDOT and HART. They want the TIP to include regionally significant projects, any projects that are going to be funded with money from the Federal Highway Administration or the Federal Transit Administration. They don't want it to be a wish list. They want it to be a realistic plan of projects that will get constructed within the next 5 years. To demonstrate that, it has to be cost feasible, meaning that the cost of the projects have to balance out with the revenues. And finally, it has to be submitted to the public for feedback. That's on the production side. In terms of how we build elements of the TIP, there are some special requirements for the priority list. In the TIP, we include a list of priority projects, and the prioritization methodology has to be documented and it has to be data-driven. If I were to summarize the TIP in just a few words, I would say it's a plan that contains a whole lot of lists of projects. The reason why those lists exist are different, and we'll go through these in the next few slides, but the thing that we want to focus on is that they're organized into 3 lists, aka 3 tables. Table 1. Table 1's a list of projects that have already been elevated to the status of priorities. So they're not just random projects. These are projects that we have vetted and we have confirmed that they will address some urgent community need that we listed in the long-range plan. Among some of those needs that we identified are the need to maintain our infrastructure, the need to maintain transit assets, make the community safer on the roadways, improve reliability, improve multimodal travel and just general mobility. And there's a special category called major projects. I'll get into the details of that a little bit later. But the point here is that if a project can quantitatively demonstrate that it will have an impact on one of those community needs, it can be called a priority. If a priority project has received some funding, it can make it onto the table 1. So table 1 is a list of projects that have received either total or partial funding. And if a project has received partial funding, it needs to remain on table 1 so that it shows that the community still supports this project and wants it to be complete 100%. Table 2 is a list of projects that have been submitted to us by the jurisdictions that we believe will address the urgent need. So these are also priority projects. But if one of the projects is listed on table 2, that means it doesn't have funding.
Looking for the emails.
So this is a list of projects that are seeking funding. And so anything on table 2 is eligible, or not eligible, but we go through table 2 and we try to match up the priority projects with a source of funds that could be applied to get that project complete. The order of projects on table 2 is based on how impactful it will be in the community. So I'll explain this in a lot more detail, but it's not just a randomized list. It's not alphabetical or anything like that. The order is very important because projects at the top of the list mean that they're going to have the biggest impact on some of those needs that I mentioned. And as you make your way down the list, that means those projects may have a little bit less impact. Table 3 is the longest table in the tip. It's long because it includes all of the FDOT projects from its current work program. It also includes requests that we get for planning studies. It includes some projects that don't neatly fit into our programs like State of Good Repair, Vision Zero, so on and so forth. It may also include projects that are listed in each jurisdiction's capital improvements program. The reason why we include the capital improvements programs from the jurisdictions, the CIPs, is because we think that if someone wants to pick up a document and see all of the projects that are going to get built in the city they live in, like let's say someone in Temple Terrace wants to find out all the transportation projects that are going to be built near their home. We want them to be able to pick up the tip, look at Table 3, and find all the information that they need. Including all those projects in Table 3, even though it's quite an exhaustive list, also helps with coordination because as we're listing out these projects, it's easy for us to identify any areas where projects may be incompatible or if they need to be timed together to save money and resources or anything like that. It's important to note that projects listed in Table 3 don't necessarily fall under the TPO's control. So we don't really have a say in what happens with any of these projects that are funded with local dollars from a city's transportation fund or the county's transportation fund. If they're using local dollars, that's kind of like their business. To take a step back and go back to Table 2 for a second, I want to explain the process of adding projects to the Table 2 priority list because it's not exactly complicated, but it is systematic, I guess would be a good way to put it. So every year around January or February timeframe, TPO staff meets with staff from each of the jurisdictions. The 3 cities, Hillsborough County, T-BARTA, Hart, THEA, Port, Airport. We meet with their staff and we have a discussion about projects that they submitted to us last year that they felt were priorities. And if any of those projects have been constructed, we'll remove them from the list. If any of those projects are no longer priorities, we'll pull them off the list. And of course, they always submit new ideas that they want us to consider for Table 2 and have us try to help them secure some funding to move that project forward. Just because the jurisdictions submit a project to us doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a priority. So when we get these submissions, this year there were about 20 or maybe a little bit more than that. We go through each individual project and we categorize it into one of our investment programs that are symbolized by the icons to the right of the screen. So this icon that I'm hovering over right now, the red one, is State of Good Repair and Resilience projects that we believe will have an impact on infrastructure or asset maintenance get dropped in there. A lot of projects like bus stop repairs, bus replacements, sidewalk repairs, or pavement resurfacing, they're kind of bundled into that category. Any safety projects that may have an impact on crashes go into the orange icon or the orange program, which is Vision Zero. Anything that will reduce congestion or improve reliability, improve traffic flow goes into the purple smart cities category. Multimodal projects like new transit routes, trails, side paths, those may get applied into the real choices category, the blue one. And then major projects is a little bit different from the rest. These projects need to be described in a lot more detail because these projects are typically capacity adders or additions to capacity, like highway widening projects. It could be ramp reconstructions, it could be a mass transit program, or it could just in general be a very expensive project that requires detail in a line item format. Those projects need to be identified specifically in the long range plan. They can't just be categorized as a general safety project. The details need to occur. But anyway, I digress a little bit. So once we receive those projects, the project requests, we drop them into one of these investment programs, and we try to identify and secure the best data that we can to evaluate the potential impact of each project if it were to be built. Based on our data, based on our analysis, and the evaluation that we perform, we rank the projects in order from most impactful to least impactful. And we do that so we can compare like for like some of the projects based on what we believe the benefits of it would be. So we're comparing safety projects against one another for funding that can be applied to safety projects, and we're comparing bike and ped projects against one another. You don't typically see competition between resurfacing project and a safety project. Another element of Table 2 that I would encourage you all to review is this column that I have circled in red. Because all of the projects in Table 2 have demonstrated that they will have positive impact upon an urgent need in the community. They're already priorities, but they're unfunded and they need money to move forward. So based on the type of project that it is, based on which jurisdiction submits it and what facility type, the MPO staff goes through and we try to make suggestions to the jurisdictions about what might be the most appropriate funding source to go after. The tip has a link to a glossary where all of these abbreviations, these funding codes are explained, but some of the most common ones that appear throughout Table 2 are SU. SU are some of our most flexible dollars. They're able to be spent on a variety of projects like mass transit, bike ped, roads and highways, all different kinds of facility types. They're very flexible. Some of the more special purpose funds that may have a lot of restrictions on their use, or maybe not a lot, but certainly more than SU, would be TA. TA stands for Transportation Alternatives, and those funds are intended to fund smaller multimodal projects like bike ped facilities, recreational trails, and some others. Another one that shows up that I'm sure you all are familiar with is SunTrail. SunTrail is a state program that provides money to help close gaps in the statewide trail network. The idea being that if they can close the gaps, there will be a statewide continuous greenway and trail system. Aside from the funding column or the potential funding column, another good resource for you all to check out is the TIP tool. And the website for you to access that is at the top of the slide. The TIP tool is something that our staff built in-house. It maps all of the projects that are listed in the current adopted TIP. So the screenshot of the TIP tool off to the left is just a plain base map, and all of the projects, they're color-coded by what investment program they fall into. If you scroll over to the layer shown circled with that red circle, if you click on that button, you can pull up some demographic information, and it allows you to see what projects are located in communities that may have a high proportion of low-income residents, or maybe located in a census tract that has a high proportion of racial minorities. It's a very rudimentary equity analysis, but it's good for just a quick spot check. We're actually doing a more sophisticated equity analysis later this month. That about wraps up section 1. Now moving into section 2, I'm going to cover some highlights that have occurred this year, some changes that have occurred to tables 1, 2, and 3 from the previous year's adopted TIP. For the folks on the call who have been through this process before, you may be familiar with what Table 1 used to look like. It looks totally different this year. We made a concerted effort to try to organize it. I think that the projects included in Table 1 were just kind of random, arbitrary. We wanted to make it a system so that people could find projects that they're looking for. So we color coded based on which investment program the project belongs in. Red at the top, again, is state of good repair, and so on down the list. There were about 10 projects that were completed this year, and so we removed them from the list. At the top, beginning with state of good repair, there were some improvements to the concrete on the Marriott Transit Way through downtown. Bush Boulevard had a major resurfacing project. There was some streetcar track maintenance done on the city's streetcar system. There were a couple sidewalk gaps filled in around Stowers and Summerfield Elementary School. I'm not familiar with them, so if I butchered the pronunciation, I apologize. There were 2 smart cities projects, operational improvements on Courtney Campbell, and then one on Dale Mabry from Slide of Van Dyke Road to the north. There were 2 transit projects. The Hart Airporter was completed, and the other transit project is operational dollars that were used to fund the Cross Bay Ferry. And lastly, a capacity project was completed on Bruce B. Downs from Pebble Creek Drive to County Line Road. There were 4 projects that were removed from Table 1 at the request of implementing agencies. Rome Ave from Kennedy to Columbus Drive and the 2B phase of the Green Spine were removed at the request of the City of Tampa. The Selman Greenway trailhead from 17th to 19th Street was pulled off, as well as Green Artery segments D and E. A bunch were added to the list because they were previously listed on Table 2, but they were able to secure some funding for construction, so they're moving forward. They're going to get completed. Remember that this table is just a list of the priorities that have received funding for construction. So this isn't an exhaustive list of all the projects that are going to happen in Hillsborough County this coming year. There's a much, much longer list in Table 3, and I'll show that to you in just a few minutes. But some of the projects that were added to Table 2 or Table 1 are bus replacements for Hart, bus stop repairs, maintaining the T-BARTA van pool fleet. Several resurfacing and bridge repair projects were added to the list. There were 4 safety projects, 2 of them on Fowler Ave, one from Florida Avenue to 56th Street, another from I-275 to I-75. There was a Smart Cities project at US 41 or on US 41 at Palm River Road, several phases of the Tampa West Riverwalk, and a capacity project on Rio Street. That's the project to connect Howard Franklin Bridge to the street network for bikes and pedestrians. Table 2 is the part of the tip that requires the most time and effort to put together. I already mentioned that there's quite a systematic and time-consuming process to not only get submissions from the local governments, but also to acquire data and evaluate them. These projects, of course, are seeking funding. So after the evaluation, we believe that they're worthy of moving forward. So it's a worthwhile endeavor. But what I wanted to touch on here is that the committees, our TPO committees and the TPO board set performance targets that I think I'm going to help you understand the purpose of setting these targets. These may look familiar because we go over these in the State of the System report, and we ask you every 2 years to review them, and based on how we're performing, we might need to make some tweaks. But we set these targets because they give us something to strive for. So with the limited amount of money that we have to allocate toward projects that are in the tip, we hope that if we're spending money on the best projects, we'll actually get to move the needle on some of these numbers. So when we're looking at state of good repair, we set a bunch of targets. Not all of them are directly applicable, but in general, we want to have pavement in good condition. We want to have bridges in good condition and transit assets in a working condition, right? We don't want people to be sitting on the bus and have it be at risk of breaking down at any given time. So if we're doing our job and optimizing the money that we have available, we will eventually be meeting or exceeding these targets. When we're doing the evaluation for projects, priority projects in the state of good repair category, this is the one time where we don't spend much effort collecting data and doing the analysis. Number one, because there's just so many projects that would fall into this category. There's like almost 100 resurfacing projects in bridge repair every year. Some of these are on very, very small segments of the road. But the real reason is because there's such a tremendous backlog of maintenance projects. I know that bridge maintenance has a backlog of at least $100 million alone. We don't have that kind of money, right? So rather than spending a lot of time prioritizing things that we already know need to get done, we end up just allocating about $4 million in SU funds to HART for bus replacements. They can also use that for like bus stop repairs, anything that can help them maintain the fleet in good working condition. They just end up using it for that purpose. One of the projects that we added to state of good repair this year at the request of HART was a repair replacement for a really big project, which is the HART heavy maintenance facility. They gave us an estimate of $65 million to complete construction. Of course, we don't have that kind of money, so HART staff is working on phasing that into a series of smaller bite-sized chunks. So in the future years, we anticipate that we'll be able to kind of like work on that over time by allocating small amounts of money. That's actually HART's top priority, but that's the only addition to Table 2 State of Good Repair this year. The next investment program in Table 2 is Vision Zero. Again, this is safety. This should be way more familiar to you all because we do this process every single year. Every year we update you on crash trends across the county. We pay a lot of attention specifically to the number of fatalities and serious injuries because those are kind of like the focus areas for Vision Zero program. When we get safety projects submitted to us, the way we evaluate each is by pulling at least 5 years worth of crash data. We'll go through and sort out the fatal and serious injury crashes and divide it by the number of miles for each project. So if we have 50 fatal and injury crashes on a project or on a corridor that has a 2-mile project, we'll take 50 divided by 2. A score of 25 would catapult it to the top of the list. Thankfully, I'm just coming up with those numbers from my imagination. But some of the projects that we added to the priority list this year include, well, there's several, but they include Dale Mabry from West Mango to West Pearl Ave. That's actually the highest scoring new priority that we added. That one got a score of 12.64. Moving down the list in descending order, West Shore Boulevard Complete Street Project from Kennedy to Boy Scout, that got like a 10.68, and the impact just kind of goes down from there. The third safety project is on MLK from US 301 to Turkey Creek Road. Priorities number 13 and 15 are both sidewalk projects around middle schools in Plant City. The first is Tomlin, the next is Marshall. There's another complete street project on Lois Ave from Kennedy to Boy Scout Boulevard. There are 2 safety projects, elements of a complete street project that the MPO managed about 3 or 4 years ago. Bullard Parkway from Glen Arvin to 78th Street, and then Davis Road from Morris Bridge to Temple Terrace Highway. Another project on West Shore Boulevard from Fair Oaks to Neptune Way, and then one on Ashley Drive from Tyler to Laurel Street. When we're looking at the Smart Cities program, we set targets to improve reliability. The reason why we focus on reliability instead of congestion is because we know that we already know that we have bad traffic, basically. Regardless of how much money we spend on any given corridor, we're not going to drop the number of cars significantly. The best that we think we can hope to do, or the wisest investment of our dollars, is just to improve reliability. And that really focuses on making your travel time consistent on a daily basis, so that one day your commute doesn't take you 60 minutes and then the next day it takes you 20. We want those travel times to be the same, relatively speaking. When we get projects submitted to us that fall into the Smart Cities category, it's kind of a mixed bag. The way that you can improve reliability varies so much, and the projects are so different from one another. There are like 5 different metrics that we can use to prioritize them. Some of the more traditional measures are peak period travel time index, like how long it takes you to drive a certain distance during the morning and afternoon rush hour. We also look at travel delay in minutes. If it's an intersection project, we can look at the minutes of delay at the quarter-mile approaches to the intersection. If it's a project specific to a location, like something around like a hospital or a school or some other notable landmark, we can look at delay on all roads, or we can add up the amount of delay for all roads that are within 1 square mile of that location. And if it's a transit project, we can look at on-time performance, which is basically how frequently or how often the bus is on time to its destination within a certain window of minutes. We got 4 additions to Smart Cities program this year. The first 3 are intersection improvement projects in Plant City. The first is Alexander Street at Jim Johnson Road. The second is Alexander Street at James Redmond Parkway, and then South Park Road at Coronet. We also got an addition from HART to invest in its traffic management system. This is a scheduling software that costs about $500,000 that will help them manage the buses' on-time arrivals. Category that's probably really important, or it is important, but it's probably of particular interest to this committee, is real choices when not driving. We only look at 2 things when we're prioritizing these projects, which makes a lot of them really easy to move forward. We can look at population density within a walking distance of a trail or a side path, or we can look at population density within a short walk of a route that has frequent bus service. Those typically result in metrics like population density is high, trail projects and transit projects that are located in an area where there's high population density get moved to the top of the list very easily. Some of the additions this year include the City of Tampa's request to fund 14th Street, which runs parallel to the Green Spine corridor. The Adamo Drive Greenway gap between 22nd Street and 34th. There's a footbridge on Whiteway Drive in Temple Terrace. That bridge is going to be able to support low-speed electric vehicles, i.e. golf carts. And then the South Tampa Greenway at Picnic Island Park. I believe that priority number 45 is also a regional priority. And then lastly, our major capacity projects or major investments for economic growth. I kind of use those 2 terms interchangeably. We look at 3 very specific metrics for ranking these. As I mentioned earlier, any project that ends up in this category, we have to provide a lot more detail to justify adding them to the list because the costs are typically broken out in a line item format. So we look at employment density, meaning we want to advocate for projects that are going to help people get to work. We can also look at volume to capacity ratio, which is a good metric for assessing how bad the traffic is along a corridor, if it's going to get widened or going to get some form of mass transit. And then Lastly, we also look at delay reduction. This is just a straightforward assessment of how much traffic alleviation will result from moving one of these projects forward. The 5 projects that we added this year, number 48 is the West Shore Interchange, major reconstruction at the intersection of 275 and Veterans Expressway. The 51st priority is Hart's North-South Metro Rapid construction. That's the Tampa Arterial Bus Rapid Transit Program. Brush Street from Whiting to Kennedy Boulevard, that's associated with the Water Street development. Gibsonton Drive is a widening project to take it from 4 to 6 lanes. The extent is from I-75 to 301. And the last is Big Bend Road. That's also a widening project from 4 to 6 lanes. And along the Big Bend corridor from US 41 to 301, the portion in the middle that's missing is the intersection between Big Bend and I-75. That was formerly a regional priority. That's already underway. Construction's underway. So the request by Hillsborough County is to add in the bookends to make that widening continuous across the entire corridor. That's a regional priority, and I'll talk more about why that's important in just a second. Table 3 is the wholesale list of projects that are going to be funded within the next 5 years. I mentioned several times already that this table is really, really long. All the projects that are in DOT's work program, the extent of them is significant. If you were to look at how these projects are going to impact our goals, there are more than 100 projects for maintenance, which includes pavement, bridge repair and rehab, investment in new transit assets. There's about 40 small safety projects, 30 reliability or congestion relief projects, 13 multimodal projects, and 23 major projects for economic growth. I don't want to call out all of them because there's just so many, but some notable ones include in the multimodal project list, Hart's Route 11 bus service. There's also some intersection improvements at several intersections across South County. There's safety enhancements slated for construction on Twigs in downtown. There's other safety projects on Tampa Street and Florida Ave out in Tampa Heights. And then there's one on Bush Boulevard in Forest Hills. Again, like this list is really long, so I included a link at the bottom of the screen if you want to take your time and review them in more detail. But just to summarize, give you a quick view of what's going on, we pulled out the amount of money that is spent on these projects and how they would be categorized. We're not required to do this, but this is more of an FYI kind of thing. The chart that I'm showing on the slide now shows a breakdown of how funding is allocated according to the 5 investment programs. We added a 6th because a lot of these projects don't neatly fit into our other programs, so we had to create like a miscellaneous category. Some of the projects that ended up in the miscellaneous are port or airport projects. I saw a few that have to do with landscaping maintenance, like pesticide and herbicide applications, and also some planning studies that were requested from us by our agency partners. That wraps up all of the changes to the tables this year. So I'm almost done. I'm going to quickly go through the next steps, showing you what to expect in the next few weeks before the board makes a decision to adopt the tip. So the tip draft has been uploaded to the webpage for a couple weeks. It has evolved over time, but we wanted to put it up there even though it wasn't close to being finalized. We wanted to give folks as much time as we can to review it so that they make public comment and they can ask us questions. We submitted the draft to DOT staff about a week or 10 days ago. So we gave them a preliminary draft. They gave us a preliminary review, and in the review, they asked us to include a few elements to the document just to make sure that we're complying with all the federal and state requirements. And we're working on addressing those right now. There was a little bit of an issue getting scheduling with the engagement team because they're so busy. but prior to the mail out to the board, the tip should be in almost 100% final format. So there really shouldn't be too many changes unless something dramatic happens. We're also working on producing this document so that it is ADA compliant. We wanted to make an effort as best as we can to make sure that the tables are compatible with screen readers, because in the past, the way that the spreadsheets were laid out, it was just painstaking to hear how the money was allocated in different phases. So we wanted to simplify it, and we believe we have. So that's another major change that we took on this year. We also need to finalize the list of regionally significant projects. We do this every year in coordination with the other MPOs and TPOs across Tampa Bay. Wade is participating in the multi-use trails working group. I'm participating in the Transportation Regional Incentive Program working group. That all stands for TRIP. The reason why Wade and I or anyone else on our staff participates in these working groups is because we want to identify projects within our county that have an impact across the region. That allows us to go after different pots of funds that are only applicable to regionally significant projects. So I know that Wade is working with Tina Russo in Pasco, and I believe that they have already finalized the MUT priority list. If not already done it, it's forthcoming. So they're listing out all of the projects that they believe will lead to creating a statewide network of greenways and trails, to like create some continuity across the system. I'm working with the TRIP working group to move forward projects that can demonstrate that they're going to have an impact on regional commerce and regional travel. That Big Bend Road project that I mentioned before, that is on our TIP priority list, but for it to be considered for TRIP funds, it also has to show up on the regional priority list. So assuming everything goes as planned on June 9th, our TPO board will adopt the Trails project and Big Bend Road into the TIP, and that will allow us to try to get those projects cross-listed on the regional list. And if we can do that, that opens us up to opportunities to get TRIP money, to get Sun Trail, TA funds. It's just like a pot of money that we need to fulfill a couple of requirements to be able to go after. The draft TIP and tables are already posted on the TIP webpage. As we've been working through this presentation, I've tried to include links to all of the documents wherever possible. All of the documents on that page are date stamped so that you can be sure you're reviewing the most recent version. We're updating these almost on a daily basis as information continues to come into us. We want everyone to have access to the same info. So you can go onto the page and review everything. The public comment period is already open. Clearly, we're at this committee right now. So when I wrap up, the first opportunity for you all to provide comment is going to be to talk about this tip and ask me questions. You can also go on Facebook, Twitter. We have a tip hotline that you can call and leave a voicemail. Feel free to email me or anyone at the agency. And if you desire, you can show up to the TPO board hearing on June 9th and provide a comment live. I believe that that's going to be streamed on HTV. My action, or the recommended action, was for you all to approve this year's update to the TIP, but since we're only meeting virtually, I think that a better alternative will just be for you all to leave some comments, and then we'll document everything and pass it on to the board. Happy to entertain any questions or help you all with discussion.
All right, thank you, Dr. Wong. That was pretty intense. A lot of information here, and for you to have gone through this a few times already today, it's much appreciated, and I appreciate the new format that you also outlined. I think for those that have been around here long enough, have kind of followed the process. So I will pause for any kind of comments, and those comments are more than likely to be construed as feedback to carry forward here. So I will pause now for any of the committee members to ask any questions of Dr. Wong.
And I will, at some point, acknowledge that there is a question in the question section that maybe Dr. Wong could take a look at. Thanks.
Mr. Shirk, I believe you were about to say something.
Yeah, I was wondering, Dr. Wong, could I noticed that the there's a reduction in the priority on the green spine, and I was wondering if you could address that.
I'm not really sure. I was investigating. I noticed, I don't know if it applies to the phase that you're talking about, but I noticed that some of the projects on table 2 were removed because they were funded some other way. So
Okay.
I'm not sure if it's the one you're talking about, but I did see that several of them are moving forward with construction dollars and that they don't need to be on the tables anymore.
If I could interject, I'm sorry, if I could interrupt here, I'm sorry. I think that was the green spine section 2, B as in boy, and green artery segments, D as in David, E as in Edward.
I'll have to do a little bit of digging and get back to you. All I saw was that they were, the notation in the work program was that they were removed by request of the agency, but I can get back to you and let you know exactly what's going on with those.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Shirk, if I may, I do know that the construction for the 2 green artery segments was funded through the all for transportation sales tax, and that's why those were removed, I believe. I'm not sure about the green spine segment, but we can find out.
Okay. I was just the green spine might be put on hold because of work on the housing project that's being torn down and replaced. I don't know. That's just my thought. Also the changes in terms of I-4 are going to put a lot of stress on Nucho Parkway, and I don't know if that's going to affect the that portion of the green spine.
So I'm seeing a question in the chat. What is the process of getting ideas projects on these tables? I would say that maybe the best way to approach it would be for us to put you in touch with staff member from the jurisdiction that you live in. If you have an idea for a project, I know that we and our counterparts in the agencies are more than happy to hear you out. And if you can identify a need that we haven't already heard about, we can work with you to kind of like germinate that and see if it can be translated into a plan at some point. The actual process of taking a project from idea to construction is really long, but you know, if you have an issue, you're always more than willing to submit that to us, and we'll try to triage it to the appropriate agency so that it can get addressed somehow.
Any other questions or comments? All right, hearing and seeing none. Dr. Wong, thank you again for your time, efforts and energy in here, and thanks for the work of the staff here on assembling this and kind of redesigning the whole concept. I think it was better understood.
Appreciate it. All right, thank you all. Thanks for staying awake.
Sure, you have a good time. You have a good evening. Thank you.
Take care.
All right, so moving on to our next staff reports. Wade, you're up next with the regional trail. My font's too small. Priorities, regional trail priorities. That's you, Wade.
Yes, sir. Are you all able to see my screen now? There we go. I think so. Well, thank you. And let me just pull that up. So as Johnny mentioned, every year we go through this at the regional level with all the way from Citrus and Hernando County in the on the north end to Manatee, Sarasota on the south, and including Polk, Pasco, and Pinellas as well with the Multi-Use Trails Committee. And so there are always additions to that list. I'll start with District 7, which is our FDOT district. So we've had for quite a while, the Upper Tampa Bay Trail is the top priority, and my understanding from Hillsborough County is that even though there is no request this year, it remains a top priority. But one thing we have changed as you look down this list is you'll see a P by several, in red, by several of these trails, indicating that those are program funds, which I'm happy to report there are several of. These are the two Suncoast Trail extensions that are part of the northern extension of the Suncoast Parkway, are number 2 and 3 on this list. And then the Duke Energy Trail in Pinellas continues to move along. Excuse me. Yes, it did change. The South Tampa Greenway was highlighted this year in Johnny's presentation by the City of Tampa and is also on the Sun Trail Network. They're looking for the piece from Manhattan out to Picnic Island there. Moving down the list, the next one, the Withlacoochee State Trail Extension, that is program funds, and it is penny for Pasco, and it will come off the list. The Tampa Bypass Canal Trail, which was specifically highlighted by Temple Terrace this year in their priority letter request, is also still a high priority. The Suncoast 2 extension into Citrus is part of what I mentioned earlier. That is programmed as well. And then the Orange Belt Trail continues to move along. They have segmented that. If you're not aware of it, it goes from basically Pinellas County and the Pasco line on the west side, and goes northeast through Pasco County towards Dade City. They're working on segmenting that out into different segments and moving those forward. And have a couple of specific requests there. Moving down the list, we have a couple of more that may be programmed. The Withlacoochee State Trail, the Cordy Campbell Overpass, which is in 2024. That's on the west end of the Courtney Campbell Causeway. The South Coast Greenway, Phase 3, is also highlighted by the County Commission in their letter this year. And is moving forward. The Maydell Bridge, programmed and under construction. And then the next couple are moving forward as those are being updated. The Del Mabry Overpass will be included, hopefully, with the adjacent segments of interstate as those move forward. Number 11 at the bottom of this screen, Joe's Creek Trail, that is a City of St. Petersburg project, and it's moving forward in engineering now and looking towards construction 2027. The last two, Adamo Drive, was on the City of Tampa's list this year. That is a connection that goes to both the Bypass Canal and the South Coast Greenway. It connects both of those, as well as being part of the Gulf Coast Trail. So yes, and last but not least, an overpass at Starkey Boulevard in Pasco County, which is a pretty busy road and I'm sure quite needed. Just to go over quickly the District 1 updates. Their first priority was programmed in Sarasota. That's the Legacy Trail Northern Extension. And then they still have the Anna Maria Trail and Legacy Trail Osprey Junction, which I don't know very much about, but it's under construction. So that'll probably be moving towards a program in this list. Then moving forward, they have the Fort Fraser Trail Extension and Panther Point Connector in Polk that we are waiting on their right-of-way and engineering studies on, and the Lake Hunter Trail. They have about 5 new ones this year, 3 of which are just for feasibility studies, so at the real beginning stages. That is all I have for you on that one. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
So I think Sally has a question. You're on mute, Sally.
Wade, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
What I see on our attachment was 2020. Can I get a copy of this?
Yes, absolutely. This is a table updated even more recently than the agenda went out. So I will be happy to get this out to the committee. Nothing in Hillsborough County is falling off that's not under construction. And we are just highlighting those ones.
And I want that because I've got a Greenways committee coming up next week, and some people are very concerned about not funding or funding. So I think this would be helpful. And hopefully you'll be there.
I will be there, and
great, wonderful.
We'll get it to you.
Thanks.
Wade, in the District 7 list, the overpass at Dale Mabry, the east-west overpass, is that the trail that we were trying to figure out the path by the Midtown project?
The path where it crosses Cypress near Lois, would that be the one that was discussed?
I think so. Somehow it was just north of, it was between 275 and the Midtown project on Cypress there.
Yeah, I think that is.
The Midtown project has been supportive of this, and it looks like they sort of built their wide pathway along the north side of their development near the pond that they have there adjacent to Dale Mabry. They were willing to work with DOT about tying in there in the past, and I hope they will continue to be, but the request is that, I believe on here, that be included with the adjacent segments of the interstate. And that is in this column.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Wade on this? Okay, hearing none, saying none. I think, Wade, you have the next one, the USF Green Artery Trail.
Yes, and I'm happy to talk to you all about this because I think it's a really good connection and sort of ties together 2 big areas that we've been putting a lot of focus on. So I'll get into it. The study area here is Fletcher Avenue at the north end, connecting into the University of South Florida, and looking as far west as Nebraska, and all the way down to connect south of the Hillsborough River to the Green Artery Trail segments right there, which would be these ones just east and west of 275. The Green Artery Trail on your left here was split into several segments. It was a community-led effort through several of these neighborhoods to connect to their parks, to their river access areas, and really to try and connect this part of the core of Tampa all together. I've included a couple of maps on the right here. The lower one shows food deserts, and pretty much the entire study area is in a food desert. So the more that we can connect folks to transit or connect them to multimodal opportunities that connect to the rest of the city, obviously the better. The top map is actually asthma prevalence, and several of the census tracts in the study area are at the top end of asthma prevalence. Similar is true for other chronic conditions. I use this as an example, but it's a really good place to focus some of these investments as we move forward. So if you can think of the map on the left, the top of that map is what we will be trying to connect north to USF. So just a quick summary of it. Determine the feasibility of connecting USF, the VA, University Mall, which they're going to go by the name Rhythm at University Place, I believe, with the Green Artery and the neighborhoods to the south, including Sulphur Springs, Seminole Heights, the Lowry Park area, East Tampa, Belmont Heights, and further south down into Ybor and Tampa Heights. Some of the existing plans that we have out there that we're coordinating with, we specifically included crossings on Fowler, and also we're going to be looking heavily at Bush as we work our way further south for those crossing locations. We have a couple of new Hawk locations on Bush that may present an opportunity. The Tampa Walk bike plans, which we're on phase about 6 of, I believe, with the West Tampa multimodal plan, identified a number of opportunities. Tampa has been moving forward with 30th Street, which is just on the eastern side of the study area here. And so we'll be certainly looking at that and incorporating those plans into this study. The Uptown Master Plan, which we've referenced here, shows that connection from the Veterans Administration down to the University Mall, and then out to Bruce B. Downs. So we've met with the University Mall as well as other partners, which I'll get to in a moment. They're very supportive of making those connections, and hoping to continue to connect with the few more meetings that we have on these initial stakeholder meetings. We've met with several of them and have a couple more to go, but it's been pretty productive, and we're moving right along. So just to get into the next couple of steps here, as I mentioned, the individual stakeholder meetings we are on now. We'll be holding a larger focus group with all of the folks who attended those when we have something to present, so when we have some alternatives. And we'll also be taking this out to the public with a survey late in the summer through early fall, which I'll get right to. So where we are in May is working on the existing conditions memo that takes into account the other plans I mentioned, and start talking to the stakeholders. We will take that and bring it, number one, into some alternatives that we're going to evaluate. And then we will be taking that in July out for a public survey. One of the comments we received was to keep that open through early September. So that'll probably extend out into mid-September, just to make sure we get some input from USF students when they're back in session for those crossings of Bruce B. Downs, or proposed crossings that will align with some projects that the county has going on for new intersections and facilities there on Bruce B. Downs. And that will be the plan until evaluating those alternatives and coming back in October to committees for additional input. So with that, I am happy to take any questions from the committee, and we'll have more to bring to you in the future.
Are there any questions for Wade or comments concerning this? You could unmute yourself and speak up, or chat in the box.
This is Jim Shark, if I may.
Go ahead, Jim.
Okay. One thing, Wade, it looks like a lot of the alignment is going to be in areas where we'll have significant impact on communities of color. And I was wondering if you could, if your current work with equity is rolled into this. I'm sure it is.
Yes, and we will be hoping to use some of the connections made during that effort to distribute the survey and to reach out to these neighborhoods that we're proposing to pass through. We have a great outreach team, and the way that they have been really collecting names and collecting contact information, just so we have it organized, so we know who to reach out to, has been really helpful with that effort.
Great. Thank you very much.
Wade, if you could back maybe 2 slides up. Yeah, right there. And this is the question I have is outside of the yellow study area here, but it's this solid green line. I guess that is adjacent to Fowler. That's somewhat of a proposed existing trail, which I think is more of a sidewalk and a bike lane.
I agree that it is more of a sidewalk and a bike lane, and we are updating that trail layer to correct that.
Okay,
It's a sidewalk, it's not a side path or a trail.
Right. So then the dotted line to the south, that's that CSX property, Pepsi property.
Yeah,
USF.
Yeah. By McKinley Drive, yes, sir.
Okay, so the plan right here, and this I guess would be for later discussion, is a terminus there at McKinley versus carrying through all the way to 30th or Bruce B.
Well, for this study, really on this map, these lines are from the Greenways and Trails Master Plan.
Yeah.
The north-south one that you see inside the box is the CSX line, and as long as that's a freight rail, what we're hearing from CSX is that that's a tough thing to do. So we'll probably be looking more at some on-road connections here and some road adjacent connections as we try to get south towards the Hillsborough River. One crossing was proposed on, let's see, that would be just east of Nebraska at the old trolley bridge there in Sulphur Springs. And the other crossing that exists now is at Rowlett Park Drive, which 22nd sort of dead ends into.
Right.
So looking north and south like that, we haven't really determined any particular route. And these lines are just conceptual ideas that have been on there over the years for the most part.
All right. Thanks for clarifying. All right. Any other questions, thoughts, comments for Wade?
Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. So moving on through our agenda here, I think we are down to old business, new business, and I will pause here for a moment for any discussion items that come up under this category.
I do see one in the chat, which is from Ali Wen. She says, as we prepare to resume in-person meetings, a reminder that COVID-19 vaccines are freely and widely available, which is a great reminder, and thank you, Ali.
Yes, thank you, Ali.
I do want to mention one more thing, which is the On Bikes event on Saturday that was mentioned at the beginning, but it is on the agenda at the very end. But that is, I believe it was 3 p.m. on Bayshore Boulevard there. So, and Friday morning, also ride with the mayor to Gaslight Park, getting there early, so 7:30, I think. But that will be going on for about an hour.
All righty. Any other discussion items, folks? All right, then hearing none, seeing none, I believe we can adjourn for the evening. Thank you very much again for everyone's time this evening, and hope to see you soon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Conclude the meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So is our recording stopped?
No, not yet.
I was going to ask Jim if he was still there. Was he leading a group down?